In the year 2247, Earth lay in ruins, a mere shadow of its former glory. The Vox Imperium, a ruthless alien race of conquerors, had subjugated humanity, enslaving billions and crushing any resistance with merciless efficiency. The once proud human spirit had been all but extinguished, replaced by a pervasive sense of hopelessness and despair. Yet in the depths of a hidden research facility, a flicker of defiance still burned. Dr. Lena Soren, a brilliant physicist and one of the few remaining free humans, labored tirelessly on a secret project that could change the course of history. With a fierce determination that belied her weariness, she pored over complex equations and schematics, driven by a single desperate goal: to break free from the shackles of Vox suppression. The device she was creating, codenamed Prometheus, was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Drawing upon cutting-edge theories of quantum mechanics and exotic matter, it promised to grant its wielder the ability to manipulate the very fabric of reality itself. With such power at her fingertips, Lena dared to dream of a future in which humanity could rise again, overthrowing its alien overlords and reclaiming its rightful place among the stars. But even as hope kindled in her heart, danger lurked around every corner. The Vox were ever vigilant, their advanced surveillance technology constantly searching for signs of dissent. Lena knew that discovery would mean certain death, or worse, eternal enslavement in the Imperium's infamous mind control camps. Her greatest fear was realized when Commander Zaxxon, the Vox overseer tasked with monitoring Earth's remaining scientists, began to suspect that something was amiss. His cold, calculating gaze seemed to linger on Lena during his inspections, as if he could sense the rebellious fire that smoldered within her. One fateful night, as Lena worked feverishly to perfect the final components of the Prometheus device, the alarms blared to life. Heart-pounding, she watched in horror as Zaxxon and his elite soldiers stormed into the lab, energy weapons at the ready. In that moment, Lena knew she had only one choice. With a defiant cry, she activated the prototype device, sending a shockwave of distorted space-time rippling outwards. Consoles exploded, and the walls themselves seemed to warp and twist as localized gravity fields fluctuated wildly. Seizing the moment of chaos, Lena raced for the emergency escape tunnels, the precious schematics for Project Prometheus clutched tightly to her chest. She could hear Zaxxon's enraged shouts echoing behind her as she fled into the darkness, the fate of humanity resting on her shoulders. She knew that this was only the beginning, that the road ahead would be fraught with peril and sacrifice. But with the power of Prometheus as her sword and shield, Lena Soren vowed to reignite the flames of human resistance, no matter the cost. The Vox had subjugated her species, but they could never conquer the indomitable human spirit. In Earth's darkest hour, a new hope had been born: the promise of Prometheus. In the weeks following her narrow escape from the Vox research facility, Lena Soren threw herself into her work with renewed urgency. Sequestered in a makeshift laboratory hidden deep within the ruins of old Tokyo, she pored over the schematics for Project Prometheus, determined to unlock its full potential. Day and night, she toiled, fueled by a mixture of desperation and hope. The prototype device had already shown a glimpse of its incredible power, but Lena knew that she had barely scratched the surface. With each tweak and modification, she coaxed the machine to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe in ever more profound ways. At last, after countless sleepless nights and close calls with Vox patrols, Lena was ready to put the Prometheus device to the ultimate test. With trembling hands, she initiated the startup sequence, her heart pounding in her ears as the machine hummed to life. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a sudden, silent pulse, the world around her changed. The dilapidated walls of the lab shimmered and warped, transforming into sleek, unblemished metal. The rubble-strewn floor rippled and smoothed, becoming a flawless expanse of polished stone. Lena gasped, scarcely able to believe her eyes. She had done it. The Prometheus device could alter reality itself, reshaping matter and energy according to her will. The implications were staggering. With this power, she could turn the tide against the Vox, restoring Earth to its former glory and freeing humanity from alien oppression. But even as elation surged through her veins, Lena knew that she could not do this alone. To truly challenge the might of the Vox Imperium, she would need an army of her own, a resistance movement armed with the reality-bending might of Prometheus. Carefully, she began to reach out to other scientists, engineers, and soldiers who had managed to elude the Vox's clutches. Among them was Axel Rain, a brilliant hacker and infiltration specialist whose hatred for the alien invaders was matched only by his skill at subverting their technology. When Lena first demonstrated the Prometheus device to Axel, his eyes lit up with a fierce, determined fire. "This changes everything," he breathed, his voice trembling with barely contained excitement. "With this kind of power, we can hit the Vox where they least expect it. We can make them pay for every inch of ground they've stolen from us." Together, Lena and Axel began to form the core of a new human resistance, recruiting brave men and women from all walks of life. In hidden bases and secret meetings, they trained their followers to wield the Prometheus technology, honing their skills and preparing for the day when they would strike back against the Vox. But even as their movement grew in strength and numbers, Lena knew that they were racing against time. Commander Zaxxon, still smarting from her escape, had made it his personal mission to hunt her down and crush the nascent rebellion. His spies and surveillance drones scoured the planet, relentlessly searching for any sign of dissent. Lena and her team were forced to stay constantly on the move, always one step ahead of their pursuers. But with each narrow escape and daring raid, their resolve only grew stronger. They had tasted the promise of freedom, and they would not rest until Earth was once again under human control. The stage was set for a battle that would determine the fate of not just one world, but an entire galaxy. Armed with the power of Prometheus and the unbreakable human spirit, Lena Soren and her resistance prepared to face the Vox head-on. They knew that the road ahead would be long and bloody, but they were ready to pay any price for their liberation. The fires of revolution had been kindled, and nothing, not even the might of an alien empire, could extinguish them now. Whispers of rebellion. As the human resistance grew in strength and audacity, whispers of rebellion began to spread like wildfire across the Vox-occupied Earth. In secret meetings and encrypted transmissions, tales of Lena Soren's reality-bending exploits became a beacon of hope for the oppressed masses. Armed with the Prometheus technology, Lena and her team launched a series of daring guerrilla attacks against Vox targets. Supply depots vanished into thin air, only to reappear in the hands of the resistance. Enemy patrols found themselves suddenly pinned to the ground by localized gravity wells, rendering them helpless against human strikes. With each successful operation, more and more recruits flocked to Lena's banner. Scientists, engineers, and ordinary citizens alike rallied to her cause, eager to play their part in humanity's liberation. In hidden training camps, they learned to harness the power of Prometheus, shaping reality to their will. Axel Rain proved invaluable in these efforts, his hacking skills allowing the resistance to stay one step ahead of the Vox's surveillance net. He infiltrated enemy networks with ease, gathering critical intelligence and sowing chaos in the invaders' ranks. But even as the resistance scored victory after victory, Commander Zaxxon's resolve only hardened. Enraged by the humans' brazen defiance, he poured all of his resources into hunting down Lena and her followers. Zaxxon's opportunity came when one of his spy drones intercepted a coded transmission revealing the location of a major resistance training camp. Without hesitation, he mobilized his elite forces, determined to crush the rebellion in one fell swoop. The attack came in the dead of night, Vox shock troopers descending upon the camp in a flurry of energy blasts and crackling force fields. Lena and her fighters were caught off guard, barely managing to mount a defense as the enemy closed in. In the chaos of battle, Lena saw Axel fall, his body riddled with searing beam wounds. A cry of anguish tore from her throat as she rushed to his side. the Prometheus device flaring to life in her hands. With a savage twist of space-time, Lena hurled the attacking Vox soldiers away, their bodies crumpling like ragdolls in the distorted gravity. She knelt beside Axel, cradling his broken form as tears streamed down her face. But even in his final moments, Axel's fierce determination never wavered. "Don't let this break you," he rasped, his voice barely audible over the sounds of battle. "You have to keep fighting. For all of us. For Earth." With a last, shuddering breath, Axel Rain passed from the world, his legacy etched forever in the annals of human resistance. Lena held him close, her heart shattered, but her resolve unbroken. As the remnants of her team fought on, Lena channeled her grief and rage into the Prometheus device, unleashing a maelstrom of reality-warping energy upon the Vox invaders. The very ground beneath their feet buckled and swayed, and the air shimmered with impossible distortions. In the end, the Vox were forced to retreat, their victory turned to ashes in the face of Lena's unyielding defiance. But the cost had been high, and the resistance had been dealt a bitter blow. As she stood amidst the ruins of the camp, surrounded by the bodies of her fallen comrades, Lena Soren made a solemn vow. She would not rest until every last Vox invader had been driven from Earth's soil. She would fight on, in memory of Axel, and all those who had sacrificed their lives for the dream of a free humanity. The road ahead would be long and treacherous, but Lena knew that she could not falter. The fate of her species hung in the balance, and she would bear any burden, pay any price, to see it through to the end. The Vox had sown the seeds of their own destruction, and now the whirlwind would be reaped. The wrath of Zaxxon. In the wake of the devastating attack on the Resistance training camp, Commander Zaxxon's fury knew no bounds. The loss of his elite soldiers, coupled with the humiliation of being bested by a mere human, had shaken him to his very core. Driven by a cold, relentless anger, Zaxxon redoubled his efforts to stamp out the rebellion. He deployed legions of spy drones and infiltration units, determined to root out every last pocket of resistance. His agents wormed their way into human communities, sowing mistrust and paranoia among the populace. The psychological toll on the resistance was heavy. Lena and her team found themselves constantly looking over their shoulders, never knowing who they could trust. The specter of betrayal hung thick in the air, and the once unbreakable bonds of camaraderie began to fray. It was during this time of uncertainty that Zaxxon's forces captured a high-ranking member of the Resistance. Subjected to the Vox's notorious mind-probing technology, the prisoner unwittingly revealed critical information about Lena's whereabouts and plans. Armed with this knowledge, Zaxxon launched a massive offensive against the heart of the Resistance. Vox warships darkened the skies, their weapons primed and ready to annihilate any who dared to oppose them. On the ground, legions of bioengineered shock troopers marched in perfect unison, their chitinous armor gleaming in the harsh sunlight. Lena and her team found themselves woefully outnumbered and outgunned. Even with the power of the Prometheus device at their disposal, they could not hope to match the sheer might of the Vox war machine. In a desperate bid to buy time for the remaining Resistance members to evacuate, Lena unleashed the full, untamed potential of the reality-altering technology. Raw, unfiltered energy surged through her body, warping the fabric of space-time around her. Vox soldiers found themselves trapped in localized time dilation fields, their movements slowed to a crawl even as Lena and her team moved at lightning speed. Buildings warped and twisted, their structures rearranged into impossible geometries that defied the laws of physics. For a brief, shining moment, it seemed as though Lena's gambit might actually work. The Vox advance ground to a halt, their forces thrown into disarray by the chaotic fluctuations in reality. But the Prometheus device, pushed far beyond its tested limits, began to falter. Lena watched in horror as the energy output spiked to critical levels, the machine's components cracking and sparking under the immense strain. With a blinding flash of light and a deafening roar, the device exploded, sending a shockwave of distorted space-time rippling outwards. Lena and her team were hurled violently through the air, their bodies battered by the force of the blast. When the dust finally settled, the true extent of the damage became clear. The Prometheus device lay in ruins, its secrets lost in the smoking wreckage. Lena, her body broken and her spirit on the verge of shattering, could only watch as the Vox forces regrouped and pressed their attack. It was Axel's final words that echoed in her mind as she struggled to her feet, rallying the last of her strength for one final stand. "You have to keep fighting," he had told her. "For all of us. For Earth." With a roar of defiance, Lena led her remaining fighters in a desperate charge against the advancing Vox lines. They fought with the fury of the damned, each blow fueled by the weight of humanity's suffering. And though they were hopelessly outmatched, though the odds were stacked forever against them, Lena and her warriors refused to yield. They would fight to the last breath, the last drop of blood, the last flicker of hope. For in that moment, they were more than mere soldiers or rebels. They were the embodiment of the human spirit, unbowed, unbroken, and unyielding in the face of even the darkest adversity. The Vox may have won the battle, but the war was far from over. And as long as hearts like Lena's still beat, as long as the flame of resistance still burned, humanity would never truly be defeated. The fires of revolution. In the aftermath of the devastating battle, Lena and the remnants of her resistance group went to ground, seeking refuge in the deepest, darkest corners of the earth. They tended to their wounds, both physical and emotional, and mourned the loss of their fallen comrades. But even in the depths of their despair, they never lost sight of their ultimate goal. The dream of a free Earth, of a future where humanity could once again chart its own course, burned brightly in their hearts. As news of Lena's reality-bending exploits spread, whispers of hope began to stir among the oppressed masses. In secret meetings and encrypted transmissions, the story of the Prometheus device and the brave rebels who wielded it became a rallying cry for all those who yearned to break free from the shackles of Vox tyranny. Across the globe, pockets of resistance began to emerge, each one inspired by Lena's example. In the ruins of shattered cities and the depths of hidden bunkers, human fighters trained and planned, waiting for the moment to strike. Lena and her team worked tirelessly to rebuild the Prometheus device, pouring all of their knowledge and ingenuity into the task. They knew that they would only have one more chance to get it right, one final opportunity to turn the tide of the war. As the resistance grew in strength and boldness, the Vox began to realize the severity of the threat they faced. Emperor Kizek, the supreme ruler of the Vox Imperium, dispatched his most ruthless commanders to crush the human uprisings, determined to make an example of those who dared to defy his will. But the humans would not be cowed. Armed with the power of the Prometheus device and the unbreakable bonds of unity and purpose, they met the Vox onslaught head-on. In the skies above Earth, rebel starfighters engaged in daring dogfights with Vox warships, using reality-bending technology to even the odds. On the ground, resistance fighters waged a guerrilla war against the occupying forces, striking hard and fast before melting away into the shadows. Lena was always at the forefront of the battle, wielding the Prometheus device with a skill and ferocity that struck terror into the hearts of her enemies. She pushed the technology to its limits, tearing holes in the fabric of space-time and reshaping the battlefield to her will. The Vox, for all their advanced weaponry and genetic enhancements, were ill-prepared to face an enemy that could manipulate the very laws of reality. They found themselves outmaneuvered and outmatched at every turn, their once unassailable positions crumbling under the relentless human assault. As the tide of the war began to turn, Emperor Kizak grew increasingly desperate. In a final, spiteful act of vengeance, he gave the order to unleash a devastating doomsday weapon upon the Earth itself, a planet-killing device that would reduce the human homeworld to a lifeless husk. When word of the Emperor's plan reached Lena and the Resistance, they knew that they had no choice but to act. In a daring raid on a heavily fortified Vox stronghold, they managed to uncover the location of the doomsday weapon and the key to its activation. Now, as the clock ticks down towards Earth's destruction, Lena and her team prepare for their final mission. They will infiltrate the heart of the Vox Imperium, fighting their way through hordes of enemy soldiers and reality-bending defenses, all to reach the Emperor himself and put an end to his reign of terror. The odds are stacked against them, and the price of failure is nothing less than the annihilation of humanity itself. But Lena and her warriors are ready to pay any cost, to make any sacrifice, if it means securing a future for their people. The fires of revolution have been lit, and they will not be extinguished until the last Vox tyrant falls and Earth is free once more. The final battle is about to begin, and the fate of the galaxy hangs in the balance. Rewriting destiny. The assault on the heart of the Vox Imperium was an operation unlike any the Resistance had ever attempted. Lena and her team, armed with the rebuilt Prometheus device and an unshakable determination, fought their way through the later defenses of Emperor Kizak's fortress palace. Reality itself warped and twisted around them as they clashed with the Vox's own reality-bending technology. Gravity fluctuated wildly, space contorted into impossible shapes, and time flowed in unpredictable eddies. It was a battle not just of weapons and tactics, but of sheer willpower and mental fortitude. Lena pushed herself to the very limits of her abilities, wielding the Prometheus device with a skill and precision that left even her own teammates in awe. She tore through the enemy ranks like a force of nature, unstoppable and unyielding. As they neared the Emperor's inner sanctum, they were confronted by the full might of his personal guard, genetically enhanced warriors equipped with the most advanced Vox technology. The resulting battle was a cataclysmic exchange of reality-altering energies that threatened to tear the very fabric of space-time asunder. In the end, it was Lena who broke through the final line of defense, standing face to face with Emperor Kizak himself. The Vox ruler was a towering figure of crystalline flesh and cold, pitiless eyes, radiating an aura of ancient malevolence. "You think you've won, human," Kizak sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "You are nothing more than an insect raging against the inevitable. The Vox are the future, and we will not be denied our destiny." Lena met the Emperor's gaze unflinchingly, the Prometheus device glowing with barely contained power in her hands. "You're wrong," she said, her voice ringing with conviction. "Humanity's destiny is ours to shape. We will not bow to the likes of you." With those words, she unleashed the full might of the Prometheus device, engulfing the Emperor in a maelstrom of reality-bending energy. Kizak fought back with all the power at his command, and the two titans of will clashed in a struggle that shook the very foundations of the universe. It was a battle that raged across multiple dimensions, through the depths of space and time. They grappled in the heart of dying stars, and on the edge of black holes, their powers testing the limits of cosmic law. In the end, it was Lena's unbreakable human spirit that proved decisive. Drawing upon the hopes and dreams of her people, upon the sacrifices of all those who had fought and died for Earth's freedom, she poured everything she had into one final, reality-shattering blow. Emperor Kizak, his crystalline form cracking and splintering under the onslaught, let out a final, defiant roar, and then shattered into a million glittering shards, his essence scattered across the infinite expanse of the multiverse. With the Emperor's defeat, the Vox Imperium collapsed like a house of cards. Across the galaxy, human uprisings surged to victory, overthrowing their alien oppressors and reclaiming their worlds. The dream of freedom, so long denied, had finally become a reality. And yet, even as humanity celebrated its liberation, Lena knew that the struggle was far from over. The universe was a vast and dangerous place, filled with untold wonders and terrors alike. There would always be new threats to face, new challenges to overcome. But she also knew that the human spirit was indomitable, that the fires of hope and determination could never be fully extinguished. As long as there were those willing to fight for what they believed in, as long as there were those who dared to dream of a better tomorrow, humanity would endure. And so, as she looked out across the stars, Lena Soren smiled. The future was unwritten, a blank canvas waiting to be filled. And with the power of the Prometheus device in their hands and the strength of the human spirit in their hearts, she knew that humanity would be the ones to shape that future. The Vox had tried to rewrite humanity's destiny, to consign them to an eternity of servitude and despair. But in the end, it was humanity that had rewritten the destiny of the galaxy itself. The end.